Collective. This is what it was all for. The magnum opus. The great work. So we're going to have a little alchemical debriefing after our hero's journey. I thought this would be a good way to end the Minor Arcana series for the hero's journey. Because at the end of the return, that we had just finished for Aries, it's kind of a what now? And you've gone through all this incredible strife and struggle, and you've learned and you've overcome. But now there's the process of integrating all that, really understanding what it is that you've been through. Because while you're in the thick of it, that's not when things get integrated. So we've got some cards out here from the Kim Cran's Alchemy deck. If you're familiar with the 4 stages of alchemy, we've got the darkening here in her deck, or the blackening, the lightening or the whitening, the yellowing, and the reddening, all leading up to the great work, which is individuation. So we'll start getting some cards out, kind of get into it, and just see for each of these stages, what might we need to reflect on. And I've got the Hermetic Tarot out here. So we'll start with the darkening or the blackening. And that is the chaos, the destructive phase, when you realize the ordinary world isn't for you anymore, or you don't fit in, or you don't integrate there, and things really start to break down. The Dark Night of the Soul is part of this phase. We've got the Knight of Wands in reverse, the Lord of Great Strength. So lack of boundaries might be something that we were dealing with that caused that initial chaotic destruction in our life. A lot of very fiery energy. Sagittarius, looks like. And that darkening phase, that kickoff is the crisis. These first 2 stages can get really scary, what people are dealing with. And of course, I always advocate for talking to a professional, somebody who's well versed in these things, support groups and so forth, as you go through this, because these are really difficult things to reconcile with. When you look at those past lack of boundaries and how that harmed you, there's some really heavy emotions that you'll go through, of not only the betrayal of others, but that feeling of betraying yourself. Even if you didn't mean to, it's a reckoning that you have to have with yourself, that you let yourself down. Not necessarily out of fault of your own. A lot of it can be that unconscious programming, but it's still taking responsibility for your part in the situation. And of course, I'm not victim blaming, anything like that. It's just recognizing those unhealthy behaviors in yourself. And the blackening stage, that can get really intense, because that's when all that unconscious stuff starts to come up to the surface, and you become aware of your conditioning, which is a really weird experience. If you've seen The Matrix, when he wakes up actually in the real world, in that like tank thing, that's like the beginning of this stage, like realizing that you've been conditioned through social programming or trauma, what have you, to not actually have access to your true self. So, what else do we have for this stage? Oh, and, what was it? Dissolving and regression. I was trying to read my own handwriting. But that regression stuff, I went through a lot of that in this phase. A lot of old stuff came up, but it came out really erratically because it was coming out through seizures and like PTSD, whatnot. And it had that extra layer to it. But so much of what was coming forward were memories. But because I was having a case of the wens, like I was kind of back there, but also here. And the behavior is so strange with that like complex trauma. But we've got the Three of Wands, Lord of Established Strength. Yeah, you gotta have a lot of strength to get through this. This is, looks like Sun and Aries. Because once this process starts, you're kind of confronted with an either-or path. Like, either you're committing to this individuation process or you're going to abandon it and go back to, or attempt to go back to, the life you were living before. And from what I've heard, listening to, I think it was This Jungian Life, the podcast, the failed individuation is a really brutal thing to have to go through. I mean, both paths are brutal for sure, but I think they said, like, if you don't complete the individuation process, like, that's kind of your chance, like, when you get it. So I don't know, that's that journey aspect of the Three of Wands. And Aries, first house, you know, identity. Oh. Five of Wands. A lot of fiery energy. All wands in the first stage. Lord of Strife, yeah. Leo. And what is it? North Node? North Node in Leo? That's what that looks like. And I did a random dice roll for this. I've got the 8th house, Leo, and Saturn. So, was that merging? That's Scorpio. Transformation. Ego, the I self, and discipline. So that ego death aspect of it. And I want to see, was there a specific event that kicked off the darkening, the blackening? Discovery. Mercury in Sagittarius. This came out in the Aries reading, too. So maybe there's a connection to where that came out in that reading, to what initiated this stage. And it could be like a rediscovery of self. Because that has been my experience with this individuation process. So that it's like returning me to the me that I had to give up just because of like trauma, life circumstances, and whatnot, all that conditioning that kept me away from myself. Those semantics make sense. And it was such a shock to the system. It was like waking up from a 20-year sleep. And when I say sleep, I mean like on a computer, where it doesn't completely shut down. It just is kind of in standby mode. It was like coming out of standby. And brutal. Like, I don't really have any good answers for like how to explain that once it's happening. Like, I would have benefited so much from like already having an established relationship with like a therapist or something like that, and trying to jump in to the medical system while I was in crisis. Like, there were aspects of it that absolutely made it worse. We've got risk. Saturn in Aries. But it's in reverse. A risk about what? Or a lack of risk of something. Discovered a lack of risk? Oh, maybe it was something like there was a part of you that knew this was the time. Because as we get up to the reddening, this is a unification of the spirit and the psyche. And those unconscious realms are so deep. Maybe there was just a part of you that was like, this is it. Maybe lost some inhibition in that. Because a lot of fiery energy, Aries and the wands. And Sag, yeah, a lot of fire. And that, I mean, that's the creative fire too, like the kanaz, but that's the fire of self, the spirit. Submission. Venus and Pisces. And this visual is interesting because it's a bird in a cage, but the cage door is open. Bird's looking the other way. And this is like an exalted placement, Venus and Pisces. So it's lucky, but they're trapped. Throwing caution to the wind because you realized you were in a cage. Or it could even be subconscious. Like, and then the destructive behaviors and such just start to like erupt out of you. Especially if you're in any sort of like controlling dynamic. Like using your words and whatnot in a constructive manner might not get you out of that situation. It might be, time to call some people out on some things. And in this stage, it's not going to be pretty. Uh, I'm definitely not proud of the way I spoke to some people, and there were some things that needed to be said for a really, really long time. There were some things that could have been said better, for sure, and we were so far past a constructive stage that I don't know. They weren't exactly being constructive with me either. So, we've got the lightning here, the whitening. Don't know if you heard the dogs barking all of a sudden. This is clarity, purification, and still I would put this in the crisis phase, because it's very raw. Like, you're getting back to, like, your ideals, your core values and such, like the type of things that would create friction with others that maybe you placated, or you pacified or whatever, just to get through the social interactions, to keep everybody happy and whatnot. And then that's another betrayal of self, that you are going out of your way to make people comfortable who are not doing the same for you. And I don't know, that it's like purification by fire, white hot. And there was a note about this too, emergence of the archetypes. So those themes in you, like whatever might be prominent in your makeup, and then also your wounding too, like how those are presenting. We've got fortitude or strength, daughter of the flaming sword, and the hermit. I never know if this is magus or magus of the voice of light, but they're in reverse. Oh, and this is a node card. So North Node. Maybe becoming very aware of what's going on in your South Node in this stage. And could be isolation. I definitely retreated, like went inward. And I tend to do that, like when something's up with me, like I recluse, like I have to deal with things in my own vibe, in my own energy. Keep my head right. Because especially these first two stages, it's really critical to have the right support. Like what I was talking about, that some things in the medical system going into that while actively in crisis made it worse. And it took me a long time to find the right professional and like really learn that trauma informed, not enough for me. And I have to have a female provider for me to be able to really open up and talk about what I need to talk about. I can only get to a certain depth with a male therapist. And people have their opinions in your personal life about what they're going through, you're going through, or even they're going through. Another factor that really negatively impacted my medical care were people's biases. Their overestimation of their own skills, their own knowledge, You know, even doctors aren't always necessarily caught up on the newest research. And laymen's definitely aren't. Like, it's just not their area, you know? I mean, somebody who's a layman could absolutely introduce their doctor to a new concept if they're, you know, open like that, have a good relationship. But for the most part, it's hard, like, to, when you have people in your life that are in these roles, even archetypal roles, you know, the father, the mother, the whomever, that there's like an expectation that they'll know what to do, you can depend on them, and some of those expectations are unrealistic. And it's not necessarily because of like having a bad relationship or anything, they're just not medical professionals. And I mean, how many horror stories are there about us being failed by medical professionals? And a family member, that's a whole nother layer to things. And if you've had a difficult relationship with that family member, they might be bringing baggage to those conversations. They might be bringing unresolved conflict to those conversations that really need to be focused on your care. So just be careful about who comprises your support system, because these are really vulnerable states to be in. And the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that you may not have the strength in these stages to maintain your boundaries the way that you do in these later ones. And that can make things a lot harder. The Empress in reverse, daughter of the mighty ones. Empress in reverse is not a good energy. Selfish, self-interested. And the Empress is like all four queens. And so that's all four queens in distortion. And it's interesting too that we went from minor arcana to all major, from the darkening to the whitening. So definitely that emergence of the archetypes. So maybe these were some players that had a role in your individuation process, like to kick it off, to process wounds around. And she's got the scales here. So unjust. What was this injustice? Because maybe, like, this is the clarity stage. Maybe something really came forward to your conscious mind about an injustice that you buried? Or didn't quite understand. Like, you knew it felt bad, but you didn't have the vocabulary to describe what was happening. Nope. How many is this? Oh, 4. I'll take these. We've got manipulation, yeah. Jupiter in Scorpio, status. Jupiter in Taurus, originality in reverse. Mercury in Aquarius, and health, Sun in Virgo. So some manipulation, like coming to the surface that you were unaware of. Those could be family wounds. Because like the deep, like archetypal psychic wounds and stuff tend to be family. And then they play out like later in various scenarios. But it's like realizing the people that you're dealing with just aren't who you thought they were. Kind of like that reckoning that you have to have with self, that, you know, maybe you not having well-developed boundaries for whatever reason that may be harmed you. Now things are becoming clear around who did the harming and potentially why. For some sort of status. It's Empress in reverse. And status could even be, like, that could be monetary. You know, so there's the crown. Or a relationship, you know, two people. Like, I'm just thinking of the petty things people do that are actually, like, really harmful to the people that it's being done to, like bullying. Like, just something really harmful to you for, like, low yield. Like, somebody did something terrible for, like, a $5 bill or something. Or somebody stole your boyfriend, girlfriend in middle school or something. Or they-them friend. Some kind of envy, because this is originality in reverse. Like, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody that doesn't have, like, a secure sense of self, that it's almost like they take on the personality of the people around them because they're this, like, blank slate that hasn't, like, figured themselves out yet. And this could have very seriously impacted your health. You know, I talk about trauma a lot. Generally in the mind, what it does to the mind. But it has a lot of significant physical effects. Like the chronic pain that comes along with PTSD. It's just horrendous. Let's look at the yellowing here. So this is like the transformative stage. What do we got here? Illumination and learning. I think most of the integration, like, that really happens in the reddening. Oh no, that is this stage. Integrating the purified consciousness. So, bringing things together of what you've learned over here, because over here was really heavy. But this integration process, this is where you keep things from happening again. Because once these lessons have been integrated, you can't unlearn them. Like, you can't unsee what has been seen. We've got Temperance and the King of Pentacles, now in the upright, so these came out all reversed in the whitening. Oh, and now a mix of major and minor arcana too, so bringing things together as two halves of a whole. And that, I mean, that's Temperance energy, that duality. You see that in the cups there. Looks like one is lightning being poured out and the other is water being poured out. Not the greatest mix, maybe? Volatile a little bit. And then King of Pentacles, Prince of the Chariot of Earth, Master of Coin. Oh, and this is Daughter of the Reconcilers for Temperance. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out what this word is, but it's when yin becomes yang. It's a part of the individuation process. And it's like when you fully integrate the coin of self and it flips over. So if you were living mostly in yin, you become your yang self. And you're still the same coin, it's just the other side of it. And it might look like dramatic change to others, because it is a dramatic change, but you're not becoming something new, you're returning to self, the self that's been hidden away. And imagine trying to explain this type of stuff to someone who is hell-bent on misunderstanding you. You know, like, I think in the last couple of readings I've talked about, you know, if I just presented things in this exact right way, or I presented them with this article that was like revelatory for me, like, they will also have the same reaction. They might not even want to understand you. They might just want to be right. And to someone who is change adverse, being right might look like you returning to the version of you that they have in their head. You know, it's important to understand not only your own intentions and motivations going into a conversation, but what somebody else is trying to accomplish. Because that wounding, you know, playing out over and over again, someone could be playing out their abandonment wounds on you because you're changing. Even though you're changing, you know, for the positive, for personal growth, or whatnot, they might have something in their past that is putting them into fight or flight because someone else changed and abandoned them at a young age. You know, something like that. And we've got, Six of Swords in reverse. As I jibber-jabbered away. But trying to keep you in place. This is Mercury in Aquarius. It's like a miscommunication. And because it's that Aquarian energy, there might be, I don't know, I'm trying to feel that out. 11th house, it's like community, friendships, things like that. So there might be some resistance to your transformation from a social circle that you potentially left behind. You know, in this, the Hermit in reverse over here, in the whitening stage. There might just be a full-on resistance to, like, you changing your life. I don't know. People be peoplein'. They could feel threatened by you going through personal growth. Especially if you've ever dealt with somebody who maybe didn't engage in personal growth in an earnest way. You know, somebody that like goes to therapy to take attendance. You know, something like that. Or to learn the words, like to give enough of an impression that they're actually participating in this modality, but then after they're outside of whatever adversity is going on, they go right back to what they were doing before. That's not somebody I'd want to be taking advice from. Like, what is that saying? I wouldn't take criticism from someone I wouldn't take advice from. So, something to think about. But any other details about this transformation? Trying to keep you in place. I'm also kind of getting like trying to keep you in place with money from this. I don't know why, but it's almost like there's got to be like a soap opera or like a telenovela about this, but like someone who pays their kid's partner or something to leave them. I don't know. Maybe before you went through this individuation process, like maybe you were more money oriented. Maybe you are struggling with money. In this economy, shocker. But it's almost like a temptation I'm feeling over here to like halt the process, because once you reach the reddening, that's it. There's no going back. Gold does not revert back once the reddening is achieved. And I think what that comes from, it's like in the alchemical work from way back when, if you heated up gold to a certain temperature, it started becoming red or something. I am not an expert on alchemy. This is a relatively new venture for me. Ooh. Resourcefulness. Sun in Cancer. So being resourceful about your transformation? Or maybe that's why this temptation won't work. Maybe there's some sort of temptation trying to pull you back into the ordinary world. You know, 'cause the Aries reading, we talked about that Six of Pentacles, like, carrying through from the Taurus reading, so it's like right here at this last juncture, just before you get into or over the Rubicon, something's trying to pull you back. maybe with money, but maybe your resourcefulness makes that attempt moot. Huh. And this is when those new perspectives really anchor in. Because there are a lot of things that I couldn't see about my interpersonal relationships that until I had space, I really like couldn't gain perspective on like, wait, this is toxic. Like, this is really not healthy. Like, I'm not the unhealthy one here in this particular exchange. And sometimes I needed to hear the deafening silence of my support group of something I thought was like perfectly normal. And it wasn't, because I was, you know, in tunnel vision essentially because I was so isolated when I was a kid. And it took me until, gosh, my late 30s to see things as they were. And then get comfortable with the fact that I'm going to be the villain regardless. And I can argue until I'm blue in the face about this is the way things were and can't you see it my way? No. Either can't or won't. Because there's something about your transformation that they don't like. Maybe they just plain don't like it. Like, they want to be petty adult children. They like to bully other people because that's how they regulate their nervous system. Like anything but go to therapy. Inheritance. Saturn in Scorpio. The Labyrinth. And that's certainly giving me Icarus. You know, whose hubris was it? Was it Icarus? Was it his father? Or was it King Minos? Because, you know, Icarus, you know, flew too close to the sun and all that. But he was raised in darkness. His father was the architect of the labyrinth, and I think his mother, like, passed away in childbirth or something. But, of course, Icarus would go straight for the sun. After being raised in darkness. Like, that, to me, is his father's hubris. Like, to live a life in darkness and then taste sunlight, you're not going to go straight for it. But there's also the issue with King Minos. The reason that the Minotaur exists in the first place and there is a need for the labyrinth. It's because he didn't sacrifice the bull that he got from Poseidon, and then like that whole side of the myth. But so there's a lot of layers to it, you know, inheritance, inherited. So it could be family, you know, genes, whatever. And maybe that's why they're so potentially taken aback by this transformation. There's a lot that seemed like it wanted to come out. I'm just taking that bottom one, though. Speculation. Like, I'm just getting that this is someone that likes drama. And not you, necessarily. But just, 4, 8, 4. Huh. So 8, 8. But somebody that thinks they know best. that, like, don't be silly, grown adult. You don't know what's best for your life. I do. Here's some money. If you listen to me and do things my way, I will give you this coin. And there's going to be a million strings attached to it. It's like rejecting family money, basically. Like something that maybe would have been unfathomable previously. But now that you've gone through this process, it's like, you know what? I'm better off. I would be better off in my little, apartment corner of the world than living a life of luxury and lies. At least the housework's manageable. Queen of Swords for the reddening. So this is the final stage. Everything's come together. Interesting. Very sharp wit. Huh. And like we had talked about that when yin becomes yang, and here the reddening gives me like the end of Inception, when the top just keeps spinning. Like you are one with self. Like you are now operating not either as yin or yang, but as both. And the art is a little brutal on this Queen of Swords, but she has relieved someone of their head. And it's very like, my life is my own. And be afraid, like anybody who should try and interfere with that. Like just somebody that does not take any crap from anyone. Like, you know who you are. That was the whole point of going through this hero's journey, was reconnecting with self. And then somebody who hasn't completed this process themselves, or maybe they have, or it's just somebody, that you wouldn't take criticism from or you wouldn't take advice from, is like, I know what's best for you. Like the audacity, the sheer audacity of that. And we've got Four of Wands, Lord of perfected work, and Justice, daughter of the Lord of Truth. So that's your justice. Returning to self. This is the 1111 card, the twin flame. And especially in this context, it's really that unification of self. And you can look at it as yin and yang, as the animus and the anima, like however you want to piece that together. It's the two halves of a whole. They've got the yin and yang here on this card. And it's Venus and Saturn. But a homecoming to self. And beware anybody who would consider to even mess with you at this reddening stage. Because this is somebody, like the Queen of Swords, this is somebody who has made friends with their anger. And their wit and their words. And they know how to use them. And Four of Wands, like that, sometimes is interpreted as like a house. But, home is where the heart is, as they say. And that's like defending your home, and there's swans on here, it looks like that was the spirit board reading that I did in the middle of this series. I think it was on Samhain. Go ahead and mess with a swan if you want to, but we all know how that's going to end. Like a swan isn't going to be like, "Oh, okay. Do whatever you want." No. You are leaving now. And that's just the energy that I'm getting from that reddening, after you've gone through all these arduous tasks and you solve the riddles of the Sphinx and you know, someone who hasn't done this is going to try and step to you? Really? Like, really? Be so for real right now. Like, maybe just be quiet. You know? The audacity of some people. And there's a lot of Aries energy here, so there's some audacity here. It happens. But it just, like, I feel like somebody is either has or will F around and find out. That's just my hunch on this. I'm quiet all of a sudden. What else for the reddening? This is it. This is the Philosopher's Stone. The great work is individuation. Oh, and that was, we had talked about spirit unifying with the psyche. And you can look at that as your spirit unifying with psyche, or if you are reinvigorating, rediscovering, or discovering for the first time, maybe a faith practice, something like that, that unity with either self, your higher self, what have you. We've got assertion, Sun in Aries, and this is in reverse. That I'm getting, someone's gonna try to tell you about you. They're gonna try to tell you who you are and are going to be swiftly corrected. I'll take all of these, cover her up. But it's like somebody that knows you from your past when maybe you hadn't gotten an opportunity to fully explore your faith, your philosophy, whatever that is. Even your identity, your sexual identity. It just feels like there's going to be somebody that comes out of the woodwork and be like, no, you weren't like this before. Preposterous that you would be like this now. Like, this is weird. I don't know. We've got isolation, Saturn in Virgo in reverse. Fulfillment, Saturn in Sagittarius. And optimism, Moon in Sagittarius. And I think what this is saying is that you'll find your community as a result of this. That was a really difficult part of this process for me. Recognizing that as a result of me having not gone through this process until recently, that my interpersonal relationships were built on a false self. And it's not that they were inauthentic, it's that I was operating as a fractured self. And like, I'm still me, but an integrated me, and I've never operated as an integrated self. And that changes who you spend time with And I had a while there, I don't know if it was like a phase, but where I was like, am I a phony? Like, am I not really investing in my relationships? Like, am I faking? And it was just having to work through all that just stuff of, oh, I'm a lot more traumatized than I realize. And these things about me that were like character flaws and stuff like that, those were symptoms. Yeah. So I think you can be optimistic. Yeah, you too, kitten. You can be optimistic. But you can be optimistic that fulfillment is coming. And it's going to help bring you out of isolation. It could be fulfillment maybe in your own, like a project that you're pursuing. You know, maybe you're doing something like this, and your side hustle becomes your main hustle. And you can really live an integrated life rather than this persona that you put on between 9 and 5, and then you return to self. Like, that's, you do that long enough, it's really a significant fracturing of self. I don't know, maybe other people who didn't have traumatic childhoods, like they have a more stable foundation, like to kind of weather the 9 to 5 persona. I don't know. But I think fulfillment is on the way. You know, Lord of Perfected Work. 4 of Wands. Says it all right there. But the great work. What's our last little note about this? And that, the only note I have in my notebook about this is becoming who you always were. And, oh, that's another thing about this side of it. Like these last 2 halves. If someone from your past does come out of the woodwork that, like, what is this personal growth nonsense? Don't do it your way, do it my way. No. Oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Maybe it'll come back. Oh, becoming who you always were. If they had a role in the conditioning that buried the authentic self, they might have a particularly loud voice about, like, you're going down the wrong path or something, or maybe, like, you're mentally ill or something. Like, yep, certifiable. What's your point? You know, it's 2025. Like, we're kind of past the, like, lobotomize that woman. 9 of Swords in reverse. Yep, the nightmare's over. Lord of Despair and Cruelty. Is that you, kitten? Is that you? Is that your title? That's a gnarly card, though. It's got, like, the Godsmack sun in the middle. Looks more like an eye, though. But yeah, that's, the nightmare is over. The relief is here. And, I mean, living as a fractured self, that is indeed a nightmare. And it's a nightmare that I'm just getting the sense that if you are dealing with someone from your past trying to talk you out of your personal growth, they not only had a role in creating that nightmare, maybe this is the antagonist of your hero's journey, but they are definitely not going to understand your journey here, and like why you had to get away from them. And I mean, of course, if they are taking it upon themselves to truly participate in like therapy and self growth and whatnot, but that's just not the way this reading is coming out. And that work, you know, the self growth and reflection and whatnot, they have to be the ones to want to do it, to participate in it. You can't make them do that. Hi, kitten. And we've got domination, Mars in Sagittarius, caution, Mercury in Virgo, and eccentricity, Saturn in Aquarius. And caution is in reverse. I definitely feel like domination is like part of that nightmare. And, you know, eccentricity, the Aquarius energy, that's very like individualistic, letting your freak flag fly. And that's what individuation is helping you do again. You know, the whatever conditioning that you went through, whatever traumatic events that buried, you know, the you that would wear like crazy colors instead of like business smart whatever. You know, the you that throws caution to the wind and tries something new, sees new places, packs up and moves to the other side of the world because you have the opportunity to, and you've never done it before, and you have one life to live, you know. And maybe you're not tied down by responsibilities or kiddos or things like that, and it could look or could be interpreted as erratic, irrational from people who aren't in your life anymore. And I mean, the answer is in like the second part of that sentence, that they're not in your life anymore. There's a reason for that, or maybe that could be necessary. You could be realizing that in these later stages, these last two like alchemical stages, because mine happened over here, but that's not the case for everyone. It could be a much slower, much more gradual transition. Because the fiery, destructive, if it can be avoided and do things in a constructive way, or potentially even repair healthy relationships, that seems better than what I went through. Take the bottom one here. The Sin and the Sentence by Trivium. Interesting. That's a good album. That is one of my PTSD albums. Because the Endless Night, that was like one of the first songs that really made me feel seen with that diagnosis. I was like, oh, somebody gets it. But that song, The Sin and the Sentence, individually, it's really good. The music video is really cool. And I thought we'd get both a black and white card, you know, just because we're doing the Alchemy reading. And I think this is going to be a new style of reading I'm going to offer on my Etsy store. I'm going with this one because that's what I saw first. South Park. That's one of my comfort shows. Although I canceled Paramount Plus because of the infringement on free speech thing. Not really into that. Yeah. But maybe there's something in there for you in the music, in either South Park or your favorite comfort show, because when you go through the individuation process, you're not leaving everything behind. You're integrating the past into the present and moving into the future. So, overall, I hope this helps. I hope this resonates, and if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.